They stole our sun, plunging us into eternal night. But humanity's fire still burned bright. We stood tall in the coldest dark, refusing to kneel before the cosmic storm. Our will, unbroken. The universe is a place of wonders and horrors, stretching beyond imagination, where the delicate balance of life and death hinges on forces far greater than we can ever comprehend. Throughout history, humanity has faced challenges, wars, and natural calamities. Yet, we stood resolute, never truly giving up. But when they took our sun, when they plunged us into eternal darkness, we were tested like never before. It all started when we first learned of them, the Exolites, a race of beings that existed far beyond our solar system, far beyond the edge of the Milky Way. They were not like us. They didn't care about diplomacy, politics, or even the fragile alliances we worked so hard to maintain. To them, we were a mere footnote, an insignificant species that had yet to understand the true meaning of survival. They had seen civilizations rise and fall across countless galaxies, watching with cold indifference as one world after another succumbed to their will. The Exolites believed in a singular, unwavering truth: in order for the universe to flourish, weaker civilizations must be erased. And humanity, despite our ingenuity and resilience, had become a target. The Exolites never communicated with us. They didn't need to. They were an unstoppable force, with technology and power beyond our wildest dreams. When they set their eyes on Earth, they came without warning, without mercy. Their ships, shaped like massive monolithic obelisks, appeared in our skies overnight. And within hours, they enacted their final plan: to extinguish our sun. We watched, helpless, as the Exolites deployed their ancient, incomprehensible technology. It wasn't a weapon, not in the traditional sense. They didn't launch missiles or fire lasers. They didn't need to. They manipulated the very fabric of the cosmos, altering the gravitational balance of our star. Slowly, agonizingly, they pulled at the sun's core, siphoning its energy, draining its life force. At first, there was no immediate effect. We observed, unsure of what was happening. Scientists scrambled to understand what the Exolites were doing, but their technology was so advanced, so alien, that it was beyond human comprehension. Weeks passed, and then the first signs of collapse became undeniable. The sun's light began to dim, slowly at first, as if it were fading from exhaustion. But it wasn't a natural dying. It was deliberate, calculated. The Exolites were taking our life source, our fire, and they weren't stopping. The first wave of panic set in. Governments crumbled as they struggled to understand what was happening. The rich and powerful took their private ships into space, leaving the rest of humanity behind. But even the strongest technologies couldn't escape the inevitable. The cold, the darkness, it was coming for everyone. As the days grew darker, humanity's true nature began to reveal itself. It wasn't in our wealth or technology, nor our vast cities or armies. It was in our spirit. As the sun's light dwindled, people didn't break. They didn't succumb to despair. Instead, we turned to each other. We shared what little warmth we had, both physically and emotionally. We organized, worked together, and found ways to endure. At first, there were riots. Desperation brought out the worst in some. But amidst the chaos, there were those who rose to guide. Scientists, philosophers, artists, ordinary people, doing extraordinary things. They built makeshift heat generators. They created energy from every conceivable source. Humanity's ingenuity, born from centuries of hardship and struggle, flared brightly even as the sun died. But it was not enough. As months turned to years, the temperature dropped, and the earth became an inhospitable wasteland. The once thriving cities were now cold, empty ruins, the streets covered in frost, the air heavy with the smell of dying life. The crops failed. The oceans froze. The atmosphere itself began to erode, the sun's absence weakening the protective layers of our planet. Without the sun, we couldn't grow. We couldn't breathe. And yet, we didn't give in. We fought. Humanity's resolve was tested to its core. Entire generations lived and died in darkness. Children born in the shadow of the sun's death grew up never knowing light, never seeing the warmth of a sunset or the brilliance of the stars. They were born into a world where survival was a battle every day. They never felt the comfort of daylight on their skin, but they grew strong. They inherited the same fire that had kept humanity alive for so long, an unbreakable will to survive, no matter the odds. In the depths of the darkness, we did what no one thought possible. We reached out. We made contact. For decades, we had tried to make ourselves known to the galaxy, sending out signals, hoping for contact with other civilizations. And in those years of cold, we finally succeeded. Not with another advanced race, but with something older. The arcane, a civilization so ancient that its memory had nearly been erased by the very fabric of time itself. They were a species that understood what it meant to survive against the odds, and they had seen what the Exilites had done to countless others. They had suffered the same fate, and yet they endured. The Arcane responded, offering us a lifeline. Their technology, like that of the Exilites, was beyond our understanding. But unlike the Exilites, the Arcane did not seek to destroy. They saw our will to survive and recognized the spark of life in us that could not be extinguished. They taught us how to harness the energy of the very void itself, how to create artificial suns, small, controlled stars, through the fusion of the fundamental forces that govern the universe. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was enough to give us hope. As the years went on, humanity adapted. We learned to live without our sun, creating new sources of light and warmth. But the scars remained. Our world was not the same, and it never would be. We had lost something fundamental, the light that had given us life, that had nurtured our civilization. Yet, even in the deepest cosmic winter, we refused to kneel. We continued to fight, to adapt, to survive. And then, one day, we saw it. A new light, faint at first, far in the distance. It wasn't the sun, but it was a symbol, a signal that we were not alone in the universe, that the will to survive was a force more powerful than the darkness. And it was then that we realized something profound. The Exilites had taken our sun, but not our will. In the coldest moments, when the stars were out of reach, we became the light. We carried the flame of defiance and survival across the darkness of space. The Exilites thought they could extinguish us. But they were wrong. We were human, and no matter how many stars they took from the sky, our will was something they could never erase. As the years stretched into centuries, humanity rebuilt. We didn't wait for salvation. We didn't look to the stars for answers. We created our own future, forged in the crucible of survival. Our cities rose from the frozen ruins. We spread across the stars, not as conquerors, but as survivors, resilient, unstoppable, unyielding. They took our sun, but not our will. And as long as humanity still breathes, we will never kneel.